In this exercise, you're going to be creating an animated traveling ball that bounces from one side of your screen to the other. Now, in order to do this, we're going to be creating a special custom graphic symbol that has its own animation timeline within it. From there, we're going to take this timeline and adjust its momentum so that it looks like it's bouncing and also losing height and distance as it travels. To get started on this exercise, you should have downloaded the Arc Ball Bounce Animate file from the class Moodle page. When you double click and open it up, this will have everything set up exactly the way I want it to be for this exercise unit. The first thing I would do is to go to your zoom level and set it to show all. This will show everything that we're going to be working on. Now you can see that this has a background layer added to it, and if you go down to your timeline, you can see there's a layer for ball and a layer for background. For the most part, we're not going to do anything to this background, but it should be included as part of your final file that you'll turn in. Now when you play this file, all you see is just a simple ball that's bouncing, squashing, and stretching, and returning back to its original position over and over again. We want to have this ball move across our scene from one side to the other and have it arcing along the way. Now to do this, we're going to create a special animated graphic symbol. This new symbol isn't just going to have a static stationary ball, it's actually going to be a symbol of the bouncing ball. So to do this, let's go down to our timeline and let's select all of these keyframes. I'm going to click on the first one, hold down Shift, and click on the very last frame. With all of those selected, we can right-click on it, and let's choose to copy these frames. So with all of this animation selected, we can go over to our library panel, and at the very bottom of your library panel, let's create a new symbol by clicking on the little plus sign. Whoops, excuse me. Clicking on that plus sign will ask us to create a new symbol. Now we've already got a symbol called ball, so we're going to call this bouncing ball. Bouncing_ball. The type of graphic that we're going to be creating is going to be a simple graphic, and everything else will remain the same. And we'll say OK to this. Now this gives us a blank canvas to paste our frames into. So returning back down to our timeline, you can right-click on the first frame and let's paste those frames into here. You can see it automatically adds all the frames, and it does add the ball typically to the upper left-hand side. Now you can always go to zoom and do show all, and this will back out to show you the entire bouncing ball frame. Now let's see this new bouncing ball symbol in action. Going back up to the top, we can click on the arrow to go back to our Scene 1 timeline. And let's go down to our timeline, and I'm going to create a new layer that's on top of the ball. By the way, I'll click and drag up so I can see this a little bit better. This new layer 1, I'm going to call this my bouncing ball layer. We'll select frame number 1, and inside of this one, let's go to our library and click on the bouncing ball and drag it into our timeline. Notice now I've got a bouncing ball and a regular ball that's on top of here. With our new bouncing ball selected, we can get rid of our regular ball layer. So click on the layer itself and hit the trash can to delete it away. And now we're only going to be working within this bouncing ball area. If I was to press return to play it, you can see that the ball is still going to bounce, but check out our timeline. There's no tweening inside of this. This is because this one symbol, all of the action is happening inside of that symbol. What we want to do now is to have the ball bouncing from one edge all the way over to the other edge over and over again. So to do this, I'm going to zoom out just a bit. So I'll go up to my zoom level, set it to be about 50% so I can see more than my entire area. And let's select that first keyframe again and move our ball outside of our staging area. So we're going to have it start here. Then let's go down to our timeline and let's give it about 3 seconds of time. So going down and locating the 3-second mark, we'll hit F6 and add a keyframe here. Let's also do the same on the background layer, so that extends that time as well. With this 3-second keyframe selected, we can click on our ball and let's drag it to the other end of our timeline. Now when we hit return, you can see that it's going to bounce in this position. And let's go back down to our first keyframe and let's add a motion tween, or a classic tween, excuse me. So selecting it, choose classic tween. Now when it moves, it's going to move across the area, bouncing about 3 times. So this is the power of using an animated graphic symbol within your timeline. All of the bounces are happening within the symbol, and all I've got to do is to change the starting and stopping point of that single symbol. Now, as the ball is traveling, we want it to lose both height and momentum as it goes from the left to the right-hand side, the way a ball would naturally bounce and move. So to do this, let's go back to keyframe number 1 and double-click on your symbol to enter into that isolation mode. This will allow us to edit the timeline of the bounce within the graphic. Now as it bounces, let's have it lose some momentum and height. If you click on the first keyframe, you can see this is the highest it should be. By the time it goes to the next bounce, in this case keyframe number 24, it should be slightly lower. So select keyframe 24, and to move it down, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and use my arrow to move it down accurately. So holding Shift, I'm going to hit the down arrow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Next, let's go to the next keyframe. In this case, it'll be frame number 47. And with it selected, let's go down 10 times. So holding Shift, hitting the down arrow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it goes down even farther this time. Finally, let's go down to the final bounce. This will be keyframe number 70, and with frame 70 selected, hold down Shift and hit the down arrow 15 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. With that done, as we play through each one, you can see how it slowly loses momentum and bounces less and less each time. Now, in addition to losing the height, we also need to lose some time in between each of the jumps. So going back down to our timeline, if the first bounce takes this long to do, once it hits the ground, it needs to lose a frame. So with the timeline or the playhead in between these two sets, click on any one frame and then right-click on it, and let's choose to remove the frame. Notice the keyboard shortcut is Shift F5. Doing that will back out one frame. Let's do the same on the other side of the height. So with one frame removed there, we need to remove one frame from this portion. So I'm selecting, in this case, frame 28, right-click, and choose Remove One Frame from there. Next, as it strikes the ground again, we're going to have it remove 2 frames. So with one frame selected, I'm going to do Shift F5 once, Shift F5 twice to remove 2 keyframes. Move over to the next portion, and then remove another 2 keyframes. So Shift F5 once, twice to remove 2. Finally, it's going to strike the ground again, and this time, finally, let's remove 3 keyframes. So hold down Shift and hit F5 once, twice, thrice. So now as I play through, not only is it losing height, but it's also losing some momentum as well. Now before we exit out of the symbol editor, I want you to make note of how many frames it took to do these 3 bounces. In this case, this very last frame is frame number 61. With that noted, let's go back up to the top left, and let's go back to scene 1. This is our main scene. If we were to play the ball now, you can see that it bounces and it's losing momentum. But did you see the little problem that happens right there? How it's kind of glitching back and forth between that. The reason for this is, check out our timeline. There's about 72 frames along this edge, and it only took 61 frames in order to do the full loop. So what we need to do is to readjust our time on our main timeline to match the time on our symbol. So to correct this, I'm going to select the 61st frame. I know that it's 61 because it's indicated right there. And I need to delete away all of the keyframes that are after this position. So holding down Shift and hitting F5, delete away everything until it reaches that point. Notice that the 62nd keyframe goes back to its original position. So it actually should be ending right here on 62. Let's do the same thing for this one. So select keyframe 61 on your background layer, hold down Shift, and hit F5 to delete all those away till it backs out to there. Now as it plays through, this should give you a perfect bounce all the way to the end. Then of course it resets back up to here. Now to further emphasize the movement of the ball as it's traveling, we don't just want the ball to fall straight down. We want it to stretch out and skew toward the direction that it's falling and then away from the direction that it's rebounding. So once again, choose frame number 1 and double click on your bouncing ball to enter into the isolation mode. So here's what it's doing in practice. As it falls down, you can see that it stretches out all the way to this keyframe before it finally squashes and as it hits the bottom edge. So as it's falling, we want to be able to skew it just slightly from one edge. So with this second keyframe, frame number 12 selected, let's open up our transform panel. I'm going to drag it off so we can also see it working over here. There we go. Within the transform panel, you have a skew selection, and this is the skew that we want to set. And the book's going to recommend for this first falling action to do a -5. So this is going to skew it just slightly one way. Then as it hits, it's going to squash down, and as it rises back up, we want frame number 14, this second or first keyframe after the squashing, to be skewed the other way. So we're going to choose skew and set that to be +5. And at return, you can see it goes this way. So as it falls, it skews one way, then goes back and skews the other way. Let's do the same for the other ones. So it comes back up. Again, choose the first falling one. We're going to set the skew to be -5. Then go to the next one, and as it rises up, this is frame number 35 by the way, set the skew to be a +5. Then choose frame number 52, and as it falls, we're going to set the skew to be -5. And then finally, as it rises back up, frame number 54, we're going to set the skew to be a +5. With that done, we can close out our transform tool. Let's go back up to scene number 1. Let's test it out. So pay close attention. As it falls, you can see it skewing and then bouncing back up appropriately. We'll let it play through and match from there. That's looking really good. With this done, we can now save our document and upload it to Moodle. So we'll go up to File, let's do a Save As. Do make sure to add your name to the beginning of it and keep the file format as an animate document. When you hit Save, this animate document is what you'll upload for your exercise grade.